Hi everybody, Father Bill Holtzinger here, and this is your Friday Reflection. Well, today is Thursday, that'd be January 22nd, which is the Thursday of the second week of Ordinary Time. And today we have a set of readings for the Mass that I want to go back to. If you didn't come to Mass, I want to read to you part of this because it brings to mind one of the sins that we don't often confess, and that is envy. People do confess often jealousy, but envy not so much. Let me read you this text from 1 Samuel chapter 18, the later part, verses 6 through 9, and then it picks up 19, verses 7 through 1. It says, "When David and Saul approached, on David's return after slaying the Philistine, women came out from each of the cities to Israel to meet King Saul. Singing and dancing with tambourines, joyful songs and sistrums, the women played and sang. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Saul was very angry and was resentful of the song, for he thought, they give David 10,000, but only 1,000 to me. All that remains for him is the kingship. And from that day on, Saul was jealous of David. Saul discussed his intention of killing David with his son Jonathan and with all his servants." And it goes on. So what's going on here? What's the issue? Well, we might think, of course, one of the issues is that we're celebrating the killing of 1,000 or 10,000. Today in our culture, I hope that we would never rejoice in the death of anyone. In fact, it reminds me of a movie that came out a few years back. Tom Hanks was the main character. He played Captain Ernest Krause in the movie Greyhound. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. It's based in World War II, and he was a captain of a cruiser that was trying to protect ships that were going to Europe, specifically England, to help with the war effort, etc. Okay, so what's happening then is there's U-boats, German U-boats that are patrolling the area and trying to take out some of the ships that are part of this group of vessels. Well, the Captain Krause, does a pretty good job of attacking these U-boats. The movie actually starts with him in prayer, reading the scriptures, and it ends with him in the same way, back in his bunk, reading the scriptures. But in between there, he does have to attack these U-boats, and it's very scary. It's well done. And at one point, he takes out one of these U-boats, and floating to the top was oil, yes, and some flames, but also blood and water, and blood in the water with the bodies of the men from that submarine. And of course, the men on the actual ship are excited. They're rejoicing in the destruction of this U-boat. And one can understand that because everybody's lives are in jeopardy. But Captain Krause does not rejoice. He actually sees these bodies. You can imagine what he's thinking because he's sad that they have had to pass in order to create safe passage. I think that is actually, so we're not really rejoicing in the death of people. We should never do that. However, in this case, yes, they were attacking, and you could say that's a just defense since they were trying to take him out, as well as the rest of the fleet that was there. But nonetheless, even the killing of people, we should never rejoice in. In fact, this day is the day where we're being asked by the U.S. bishops to pray for an end of abortion in our country. And I want to encourage you to do that because we don't rejoice in any killing of people. But in this case, we have this amazing rejoicing of thousands and 10,000 of people, which, this is a different time, different situation. Their sensibilities and their understanding of things are a little different. However, the Ten Commandments still are at large here. In other words, we know that the 10th commandment, which is an important one, you shall not covet anything, really, is at play. So what's going on? When we look at someone and we see, let's say, a neighbor who has, let's say, a new car or maybe a lawnmower, or who knows what it is. It could be a skateboard. Maybe someone's got a special new game at their house, and we become more than jealous. We actually are saddened because we don't have that. Now, there's ways we may to solve that. I mean, you could actually go out and, by just means, go buy a car, get a new lawnmower or riding or whatever instrument that is, or buy a new game machine. But what is not okay, which is where this desire becomes envious, is when we want the destruction of the other person or stealing of that stuff that they have to lose in order for me to win. So if you look at a neighbor's yard or anything therein and you want to destroy it, there's actually YouTube videos of people doing this. They're mad at their neighbors, so they vandalize. That's envy. The Catechism speaks about envy in this section under paragraphs 25, I'll say 35 through 2540, under the disorder of covetous desires. This is 2537. It says, "It is not a violation of this commandment to desire to obtain things that belong to one's neighbor, provided this is done by just means." Okay, that's what I mentioned. Paragraph 2539 says, "Envy is a capital sin." In other words, it's very serious. It refers to the sadness at the sight of another's goods and the immoderate desire to acquire them for oneself, even unjustly. When it wishes grave harm to a neighbor, it is a mortal sin. St. Augustine saw envy as the diabolical sin. From envy are born hatred, detraction, calumny, joy caused by misfortune of a neighbor, and displeasure caused by prosperity. Paragraph 2540. Envy represents a form of sadness and therefore a refusal of charity. The baptized person should struggle against it by exercising goodwill. Envy often comes from pride. The baptized person should train himself to live in humility. And quoting St. John Chrysostom, would you like to see God glorified by you? Then rejoice in your brother's progress, and you will immediately give glory to God. Because his servant could conquer envy by rejoicing in the merits of others, God will be praised. When do we do this? You might think, well, when do we ever engage in envy? Well, those examples I offer, but maybe they don't apply to you. We'll have some other thoughts on this. How about when we engage in gossip? Gossip about another person, whether it's true or not. Either way, we're casting a bad light upon that person, and other people believe it. Maybe we are going to refuse being happy for somebody else who succeeded at something. Maybe got a good grade, won a game, etc. In fact, it was interesting because this last week when we had the college football national championship, after the end, a couple players on one of the teams approached other players, and one tried to strike another one. Now, I don't know all the details, and who knows, maybe one of the team members was mocking them. That would not be okay. That would be actually part of this envy, that we have to put somebody down in order for us to be put up. But the person who's lost, they're no better by striking out. So in other words, they have to diminish that person by striking out in order for that person to have any goodness in them. So you can imagine if it goes too far, then murder can be a result of envy. There's actually a list of these things. So sins, detraction, calumny, hatred, division, sabotage, injustice, cruelty, or Schadenfreude, which is, I love that German name. It's the joy at another person's sufferings. This is what I love about that movie, Greyhound, is that Captain Krause did not rejoice in the sufferings, or in this case, the death of those soldiers in those U-boats. He had to do a very terrible thing, and that is to stop them. But the only way he could do that was to sink them. My friends, I want to encourage us, and I challenge myself. When do I speak down about someone? And I don't have a right to speak about them at all. Maybe I have special information, or you have special information, and you share it with somebody, but you don't have permission to share it. Why would we do that? We might say, well, because I just want people to know. It's not. No, actually, that's probably, again, goes back to this whole issue of envy. I envy, and I need to put someone down in order for myself to be put up. This might be something that's a sin that you might want to consider when you're preparing for confession. We're not in Lent yet, but we have the confessional typically open on Saturdays from 4 to 5, or by appointment. But also you might start thinking about this. When have I felt that way? When have I said that I want something another person has, and in fact, I don't want them to have it themselves, so I'm going to do what it takes to make that happen. Some thoughts to think about. God bless you, everybody. This weekend, Deacon Brett's going to be preaching. Pray for him so that he may be giving a homily that we need to hear and we can also grow in our faith about. And I'll see you this weekend. God bless you all. Bye-bye.